observe this step on purely academic way. It is fictional, but it is so near the truth that we can treat it as a true event, but it is a fictionalized way of things that happen in major town, especially Nairobi. There was this man, young man, who used to work for an international NGO, and he used to earn a lot, used to earn well, such that on a normal month he used to spend 40% of his salary. But on an abnormal month, such as when he's on leave, the month that he has occasions such as birthday and weddings and whatever, he would spend 60%, and whatever remained he used to leave it in his account. Then one day, and he used to interact well with his people, he used to interact well with his relatives and friends. So one day the company folded up. It went into bankruptcy. So the fellow was sacked, he was terminated, and there was nowhere he could take the company to court, because even if he sued them, they are already bankrupt. The first person to notice that all was not well was his landlord. This is somebody who used to be out of his house for 14 hours a day, except on Sundays and public holidays. But then suddenly, his landlord noticed that the fellow was not as jovial as he used to be. He also noticed that the fellow, most of the time, he was keeping into the house. That is, he would leave the house, look for a job, then come back. And looking for a job, you can't look for it for more than 8 hours. One thing followed the other. He reached a place when he even delayed in rent. It reached a stage where, and he used to tell his friends and relatives, and nobody, they would just tell him, life is like that. Then one day the landlord came, looked at the things. Those who have stayed in Nairobi and other urban areas will have noticed that the landlord usually is interested in knowing what you have in the house. Because if your rent arrears surpasses what you have in the house, he would not allow you to spend the evening. He wants to retain the things in your house so that if you fail to pay, he can auction your things. So one day he told the fellow, I'm locking the house. The fellow only took an A4 manila paper with his ID, his certificates and all those things. He had it on paper. Started walking around applying for jobs and staying hungry. He would go to Central Park. He used to go to Central Park and sleep on those metal benches, cement benches. He would sleep there. In the morning he would go. He looked more of a chokora than the technician he had. So one day, somewhere opposite Utalii House, a chokora snatched his manila paper and a wallet from his pocket. He had stayed for so many days without food, so he could not chase that person, and he did not even have voice to shout, "Mwizi, mwizi." So he just let and turned and went. But then, when he turned and gone, the chokora thought that maybe this fellow was chasing him. So he crossed the Uhuru Highway without looking, and he was hit and died. The only documentation he had was the certificates of this man and the ID, which was in there. So when the police came, they took the body to the city mortuary, and it was written that so and so had died. And you know, so and so who had died, he came the ID showed that he came from such and such a place. So his home area were informed that his body is in the city mortuary, and they started funeral arrangements. They made funeral arrangements, they used a lot of money. The landlord who had locked his house opened his house and let people in. And you know, as it happens during those occasions, everybody talks well of the dead person. So they talked and talked. Arrangements were made on the day that the body would be taken out of the mortuary and be taken home for funeral. A lot of money was, since it is not an actual event, but I can say quite a substantial amount of money was raised. Then one day, this gentleman, when he was sleeping on this cement, he felt he has no ID, he has no qualification because all his certificates have been stolen. But he had a dream that if he were to sell items in his house, he would raise a certain amount. And in his dream, he would start his business from the amount that he would raise. So, in the morning he woke up and he headed to his house. Nowadays they call them apartment. During my time we used to call it flats. Nowadays they call it balcony, but during my days we used to call it veranda. So he went to his apartment and with an intention of telling the landlord that he wanted to sell everything in his house so that he clears with the landlord the rent, and the other he starts a business. Going there, he found many people, and when they saw him, they ran away because they thought a dead person has risen. He looked at the money that had been risen for his funeral. It was 10 times of the amount that he had dreamed that he could start a business. And of course, he started a very big business. That is Kenyans for you. You are alive, you are going through hardships, nobody cares about you. But once you die, they'll contribute millions and millions. This tape, although it's a fiction, but it is based on a true picture of what Kenyans would do if you or I were to die now. You'll find people whom would not even give you 10 shillings, but contributing 10,000 towards your funeral. Thank you.